Welcome, welcome, welcome to this edition of Sagionic 1027. We are so glad that you decided to join us today, and I'm very excited to introduce you to our speaker, our guest speaker. However, I would like to share a little bit about our program. The word Sagion, actually, we're going to backdrop. So it's important as created human beings to partner with creation. If we look at our trees that are all naked right now, right? They don't have to work at becoming naked. They are walking out or evolving in how they were created to represent beauty in the land. And it even helps us with our oxygen too. So I was walking through my hall, and in my mind, I heard a thought, and it said Sagionic. And I was like, wow, that's wild. What is that? And it was even spelled Sagionic. And I was like, okay, this is really wild. And so I looked it up to see what it meant. And the word Sagionic means movement by movement in time. It's also Greek, and I'm Greek. So it was really exciting. So I just kind of like hung on to it, kind of like the song I'm Bringing Home My Baby Bumblebee, right? Well, a couple of years went by, and then this program came to be through being called to a boardroom in my office. And so then I found out that the word Sagion by itself means wisdom carrier. So our desire here at Sagionic 1027 is how do we interview business mindsets? How do we take learned discipline, wisdom, knowledge that have come their direction? How do we take it and kind of squeeze it out of them so that other people can gain from what they've already gone through? So today, I'm very excited to introduce our guest. This is Jillian Hutchins, and we get to learn a little bit about her world and how wisdom insight has grown through her. So, Jillian, what would you like our audience to know today?
Oh man, I am a mother of five. I was only going to have two. God has an amazing sense of humor and a better plan than I could ever had. All I ever wanted to be was a mother, and so I feel like the direction of all of this has to do with how that came about and the struggles and the battle that came with that and the battles that continue with that. I am a pastor's wife. My father was a pastor, and I did not marry a pastor on purpose. But again, God has a sense of humor. I married an electrician, been married for almost 15 years, and I'm a missionary. So we mostly go to Mexico every year to an orphanage. So that's an exciting piece of it, and engaging my children in that so they can see other parts of the world and how life is different. I was a personal trainer for a long time, and God asked me to actually lay that down here just recently so I could focus on his main goal for me right now in the season is motherhood. So that's what I know well. I am one of five children. I have four brothers, two older, two younger. So I'm tough as nails in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, I'm really soft. And I have stories. My mother has stories of me as a child. My youngest biological brother, so I have one adopted brother, but my youngest biological brother came home on my birthday. He was born 4 years after me and came home. So it was 4 years and a day before me, and he came home on my birthday. So as a 4 year old little girl, I had a live baby doll. And my mom tells stories of when I would hear him crying in the middle of the night, that I would get up and I would sit with her while she was nursing him, and I'd be falling asleep, and she'd be like, Jillian, go to bed. No, mom, I gotta be with the baby. And I would reprimand her and tell her that she needed to change his diaper, and she'd be like, I will in a minute. She was at this point had four children of her own, and be like, Mom, he's gonna get a rash. So this has been instilled in me for a long time. She tells the story of how I started crying one time because he wouldn't let me play with him anymore. And she's trying to explain to him that he's his own person and he's not my baby. And that was just devastating for me. And then I just remember always wanting to volunteer in the nursery and hold babies. And we had the opportunity as a family to go to South America, and my parents administered an orphanage when I was 10 years old. And so we lived in Santa Cruz, Bolivia, and there was 40 kids in this orphanage. And of course, even at 10 years old, I was drawn to the toddlers and the babies, and how could I mother them and how could I nurture them. And there's this picture of me holding a girl who has a broken leg. These three kids came and they were so malnourished. Most Bolivians have black hair, black eyes, and these kids had like a rust colored.
1 second, you went off. You went off camera for just a second. You're back on now. Okay.
Okay.
So most of them had dark hair, but now go on from there.
These ones were so malnourished that they had like a rust color hair, and it was a sibling set, a brother and two sisters. And I just remember having so much heart for them, even at 11 years old at this point. And I just kind of took them as my own as much as you can as an 11-year-old girl. But the middle girl was about my size, even though she was only about 6. She broke her leg, and I was carrying her everywhere. She weighed about as much as I did, but I was just carrying her everywhere that I could and just loving her. And I remember that after we left there, that she had a picture of me at her birthday party. So I touched a piece of her. And I realized that God has called me, as I look back at my life, to be a mother to people who maybe didn't have a loving mother, or people who didn't have a mother at all, or a spiritual mother where mothers are not walking with the Lord. There's another story of a friend of mine.
Well, let's pause you there for a second. Let's pause you, okay? Because let's go back to this for a second. We're going to put a balance before us. Let's get both hands in here. We're going to put a balance before us. The personal satisfaction of being a personal trainer and having all of these clients love you. Motherhood. Oh, so how did that set in you? How did you navigate and maneuver through that? That a passion of yours, because I know the endorphins that happen when you're lifted. It's pretty intense. It's pretty beautiful. I know that, I actually have a professional gym the second you walk in my house. Okay. So I know the feeling of feel my muscles. Right? And just, it's very, very satisfying. So can you break that down a little for viewers?
Yeah. Well, it took me a long time to walk into personal training first. It took me about 10 years to be confident enough to even take a test. So a small background was I was raised in the church my entire life. My dad had his first church when I was 5 years old. And I just remember like seeing, they were watching like bodybuilding shows or something. I remember like, oh, that's so cool. Like, look at my muscles, Mom, right? So there was all these different pieces that made me enjoy that. And then I had this 6 years of pretty much running from the Lord as hard as I could. And I married an atheist, and I had a lot of alcohol and different things that were in my life. And I was talking about being a personal trainer back then, but I was so broken. And I was devastated at the thought that what if I failed taking the test? I mean, I studied and I did all this stuff. And then when it came time to take the test, where I had to spend $300 to take it, even though I could take it as many times as I wanted, I was so afraid of failing that first time that I didn't do it. So it took me 10 years of the Lord working on me, building up my identity and who I was, and a confidence before I went back, which of course then I had to study all over again. But I studied it. I passed it first time. I remember even the test giver was like, I've never seen anybody complete the test so fast. Are you confident? I'm like, yeah, I'm confident. And you get your results right then and there. So he's like, well, you passed. And the disappointing part was like, what's my grade? He goes, well, we don't give a grade. We just have pass fail. I'm like, oh, I wanted to know how close I passed by. So there was this process of identity and working through. And trusting that God had given me a desire for that. And so then began the work of, how do I bring this into the life and the calling that God has on me? And part of that was to pour into women. And so we started Healthy and Free, Benny Johnson's Bible study. I don't know if you've
Okay.
ever seen that one, but it's the Bible study and a movement thing. And so we had a gym in our old house, and started inviting women. And so it was a way for me to be able to connect with women, and also continue to encourage them to move to also their physical body and take care of their temple, but also honor the Lord and keep it in the spiritual part of it too, which is just as important, if not more important. And it was just so satisfying to have kind of something for me to do to take care of myself. And then the Lord called us into homeschooling our children, which was never the plan. And we were both public school.
Yay! Oh.
And I'm so thankful for it now, right?
Now
But then it
I
was
want to
so
pause you
overwhelming.
because this is important. Okay, so we are not all of our viewers are per se followers of Christ.
Okay.
Okay, so I would like you to break it down. You know, you use the terminology, this calling that was in me. Okay, so can you like rephrase it a different way? How somebody else could learn what's in them?
Yeah. So it was just, when I was talking about my childhood and wanting to mother people, I really feel like it was just in me, just this desire and this dream to be a mom and to take care by nature. I just felt like that was always been a calling on me, to take care of people. And then, of course, as I got older and matured, it evolved into wanting to be a mother. I remember, like I said, from the time, I don't even know, that I wanted to be a mother. And I dreamed about that day that I would be a mother. And so I just feel like that's just, I think everybody can think of a dream that they've had, maybe even as a child, mostly as a child. And some of us lay it down, and I'll get to that point where I laid it down for a season where I thought, okay, this is just not going to happen. And so it's just been a dream of mine since I can remember.
So basically, you would refer to calling as something that is in you. It's a passion that you can't like snuff out. It's just, it continually resurfaces, something that continually resurfaces in you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So now take it, now let's jump back into the story.
Yeah. So continued with the personal training stuff, and then fast forward, we moved to plant a church, and that was in March of 2020. The day after they shut the country down, we moved. And so then we had to move my personal training platform to online. And that was a whole other piece of navigation, trying to navigate being home and trying to figure out hours that would work and how to do it online and still navigate. And I think the beautiful piece of it was I finally came to terms with myself that motherhood was my number one priority in this season. And so I really ministered to women of all different ages, or gave a product for all women of different ages, but let them know that my children were my top priority, that I would give them the best of me that I could. But if we had interruptions with children, because I stay home, because I homeschool, these are the hours I offered. But it became this need to perform. So I was no longer necessarily loving my own workouts. I was no longer necessarily loving doing the challenges, because I felt like I had to look a certain way. I had to be a certain way. My gym had to look a certain way. And I was beginning to uh, flounder. I was pouring out too much of myself, to the point where I was just pulling on threads, just trying to make people think that. And I just kind of woke up one day and I was like, man, I'm only giving people a part of me, and I'm not giving people the best of me. And that's not benefiting me, and it's definitely not benefiting them. You know, I can wear a mask for a while and make people think or believe, and I can even believe, I feel like it was even just a lie that I was believing, that I could be all things and be a good mother and be a good wife and
Be a
be
good
a
mother and be a good wife.
yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
We
no,
had
no.
switched to my phone and I have this alarm and I'm trying to give me 1 second. I'll shut them all off
Okay.
because I have a feeling that that's just going to keep happening. Okay. I think we're good.
Okay. Do you
Okay.
just say you have to put it on do not disturb?
I think we're good.
Okay.
I think we're good. So I just was giving too much and not taking time to really actually practice what I was preaching to my children, to my husband, who's an incredible worker and is able to get more done in a day than I can do in 2 weeks, and to my clients, letting them know that there's this time where you have to rest and this time that you have to take care of yourself and let your yes be yes and let your no be no. And I was trying to figure out how to do all that and I was just floundering. So I was only giving my children just a small piece of me, but not the best of me. And so I just remember that there was this point where I was like, something has to give. And I really don't want to let people down because I am a pleaser. I like to please people and I like to see people happy. And I think that's part of the personal training thing, right? You want to help clients and you want to help them in their journey. And so there's a piece that brings joy, but not, I didn't want to compromise anymore. And so I just remember I had complete peace when I finally decided, okay, it's time to shut down the business. And I still had the fear of letting people down and having people think, wow, she's not fully invested as she thought she was, right? I had to fight these lies of who I'm not really, but what people were perceiving or talking about me or saying about me. I had to just lay it all down and go, it doesn't matter because who deserves my best is my children and my husband and then my church family and then really my clients, even though they were paying in the worldly sense, that doesn't make any sense because these people are investing their money.
Yeah.
And so there, I had one client that I had to finish up. And so she was my very last client. And it was just such a blessing, but I just had a peace because now I didn't have to focus in multiple directions. I was able to focus on the season with my children. And I'm learning that it's very short. As they say, the days are long, but the years are short. So my oldest is 13 and they go down every 2 years to 5 years old. So that's kind of how I laid it down and it was like I was able to take this deep breath again. It's like, okay, I don't have to figure out how I'm going to multitask. I mean, I was exhausted.
Yes, yes, yes. So let me pause you there for a second because this is really important. Whether it be in motherhood or in any other avenue in your life, any other avenue in your life. So one of our people that we interviewed is Casey Birch, and she said something quite profound. She said, anytime I move forward and there's dis-ease, I have to pull myself way back, get to a place of peace, find that calmness, and then I can proceed forward. And so let's think of muscles for a second, right? You can tear a muscle down so far, but if you tear it too far, damage occurs, right? So
Right.
it's the breaking down of the muscle that when you rebuild it, that the muscle becomes stronger, but you can't tear it. So you were feeling that tension of something's going to break
Right.
if I don't change it. And I really like that you shared the peace that came, because when we function in peace, that's the ultimate goal of all humans. How do we feel, how are we able to drive in the car and not feel like I'm going to spell it SCREWED somebody, right? Over. or how to, just that peaceful feeling. I don't know about other people, but at nighttime, when I lay down at night, I go over my whole day and see, am I, is there anything I need to address? Did I carry myself in a way that would not be honoring, right? Do I need to call and, tell it? Because I started with 5 grown kids and then one adopted us, right? And so then now my quiver is full plus one, right? Plus their significant
Right.
others, married partners or whatever, right? I think that's important though, just having that peace. So can you, after you made that decision, to basically be in that space of peace, that oneness of peace with your family. So give us some things, like little highlights of, I remember when this took place and I just thought, because had I not said no to this, I wouldn't be in the moment to see the yes in this.
Yeah. So that moment that I gave it up and I had that peace, part of that was not having to please other people. And we all have a place where we have a passion, where we have that dream, where we have that calling in my belief that God has given me to be a mother. When I was able to shift and focus solely on that, I was really actually able to see some areas where I was missing out. I was checking the boxes off. I was doing the reading, the writing, the arithmetic with the kids. I was doing their Bible study, but I was just checking the box off, and I was actually finding myself not having joy with it. And what that's all I ever wanted to be. And I was like, I'm not having joy with this. I should be having joy that my child is learning how to read. I should have joy that I get to stay home all a day and I get to watch all these growth pieces that a lot of us miss because our kids are gone all day. And I began to see different things about my children that I hadn't seen before, strengths in them, and even weaknesses or pieces of me that I was like, ooh, that's me. I don't like that. So we're going to change that. But when I'm so busy, I can't actually see those things. I'm just checking the box off. Okay, we did school. Okay, you guys have been fed. Great, you're still breathing. Oh, you might need a bath tonight, but mommy's got to do a personal training. So if your dad has time, you'll get one. If not, those kind of things where I just wasn't able to be intentional. I wasn't able to be intentional with sitting down with them at a mealtime and actually having a conversation about the things that they love right now and the things that they're experiencing, or even listening to promptings of the Holy Spirit to go sit with my teenage daughter, because all of us that have teenagers realize that they like to talk when it's 10 o'clock at night when you want to go to bed and have alone time.
Wait. This is called pinching in between your fingers to stay alert and alive. Because they're like, finally, I have her to myself.
Yes, yes. And I had the opportunity now where it's like, it's okay to stay up till midnight because your child needs you. And it actually becomes this joyful conversation. You to learn more about the maturity that she has and the things that she's struggling with that I would have never known or had I not been able to take that time. So, okay, we stayed up late. We're going to shift school 1 hour so that we can all function tomorrow. And being able to take those character building moments with my children when I see that there's conflict with them, instead of just being like, oh man, would you just get your stuff together, we actually get to explore that as a family, because mom doesn't have to get school done and lunch so that she can do a personal training. Now I have these times where, okay, we're going to pause school. We might have to do school this evening because this character piece or this wound or this something that you're struggling with, I actually have time to sit with you and we get to explore it. And so those have been some of the biggest pieces for me, is really being able to see my children for how they're created and how much of a blessing they really are, where it's no longer a stressor. Now, don't get me wrong. We tell people all the time, like, parenting sucks about 90% of the time if you're a good parent, because you're constantly training and you're constantly
Yes.
having to teach them things. And you're like, man, why won't you get this? And I had a really big conviction. One time we had to borrow somebody's car because our car had broken down, and there's only so many people that have a Suburban that'll fit our car. And the way to get out the driver's door was you had to roll down the window, but it was automatic window. So if you shut the car off, I had that car for 3 months. I don't think there was one time that I remembered to not turn the key, because that was so habit, turn the
Uh-huh.
key. And I had to turn the car back on to unlock it and open the door and roll it up. And I had this conviction of, man, I tell my kids and I expect them to get it the first time. Here I am, however old it is, like 35 years old at the time, like not able to get this. I'm like,
Yeah.
and it was just kind of this aha moment, like, I need to have a little bit more grace when I'm
Yes.
teaching them and expecting them to get something that first or even second time. That it might take just a little while to build that a habit. But if I don't have that time to slow down to continue to teach them and remind them and know that they're not just being intentionally disobedient, which of course they're children, they are going to at times, just like we all like to be rebellious every once in a while.
Uh-huh.
That now I have that opportunity to take that time. I have that opportunity to step back and go, okay, let's work on that. And I have that freedom to do that now that I don't have this strict schedule that we have to. And I found too that I just don't function well on that.
Uh-huh.
Some people thrive on the structure and all that kind of stuff, but I definitely thrive on, okay, well, this needs to be addressed, so let's do this. And that has been, I think, the biggest piece is just being able to be intentional and slow down with my children and be reminded, because there was a season where there was no joy in parenting,
Uh-huh.
and there was no joy in being a stay-at-home mom, and I just felt unseen, and I felt worthless. And there's a lot of stigma behind being a stay-at-home mom, that we could be doing more with our life. I could be doing more with my life. Like, what happens if my husband passes away? Like, there's just all these things that were not uplifting. And of course, we're in the social media world now where everybody puts their best on social media. And so you see these other homeschool moms and you see their house and you see the stuff. And I'm like, well, if you want to come see me, you're welcome. But if you want to come see my house, give me a week to clean it.
Okay, now, let's pause there for a second, because I'm sorry. If somebody's filming their house on a regular basis, I guarantee you they have house cleaners coming and cleaning their house. They may shoot a 5-minute video that says that this is how they keep their house clean, but they are not. I professionally cleaned homes for 19 and a half years. So I know that they're getting this done, right? But I want to go back to something, and that is, I want you to think of the muscular system in the body, okay? And I want you to think of, is it possible for your arm muscle to be extended out here while it's over in the kitchen at the same time? Okay, that would be no. Okay, right, that would be no. So, not everybody is given the opportunity to be able to stay home to rear their children, okay? So, I want you to think of the isolated workout associated with the muscle, and how can you give tidbits of wisdom, insight on how they can isolate moments with children.
Yeah. First of all, I take the man's brain, which I've learned they can compartmentalize, and they have boxes where they have this box where they can literally think about nothing. Now, as a woman, I don't understand that. But I think it's just being intentional. I mean, when we work, there was a season when I worked, and you're just intentional. You're intentional with getting up and getting your coffee every morning, because you don't want to miss that piece, so that you are ready to go and ready to take that drive. You're intentional about dressing for work. You're intentional about getting yourself lunch, maybe packing your lunch. You're intentional about going to work and being diligent in that work. And I think it's just this mind shift that we just choose that time of intentionality with our children. So if that's as soon as we walk in the door, if that's not till after dinner, and just even laying that land, I think it's okay to lay that land and those boundaries with our children, that this is my special time. My children call it special time. Mom, can I have special time with you? They call their dad Papa. Papa, can I have special time with you? And so they have learned that if they say that, they're needing that time. Now sometimes they're trying to manipulate because they just want to stay up late and watch a movie. I'm like, when did special time turn into late night movie? This is not special time. But and I think that we have to be careful that we don't create in our mind that it has to be this big grandiose thing, or that it has to be this amazing connection. I think I can relate it to having to have the sex talk with my children, right? Somebody gave me wisdom one time, was like, when your kid comes to you and says, Mommy, how are babies made? You start with the most minute information of, well, it takes a piece of mommy and a piece of daddy. And then if they ask another question, then you can give them a little bit more. But you, in your head, you're going, oh my gosh, how am I going to have to use anatomically correct parts and tell them all this? And I think of a friend who told her kid that. Her friend daughter looked at her and said, ew, you did that 6 times? So I always have that in my head.
Yeah.
But you only have to allow them to guide that time. And if you have, like I say, we have 5 kids, and so my kids know that mommy only has so much time in the day, but I want them to all know that they're loved and that they're all special. And so there's going to be times when I pull one of their siblings to run with errands with mommy, and it's not because I don't love them, but it's because I want to build a relationship, and they might be next. And so I think we have to get out of our head that it has to look a certain way or be a certain way, and really allow your children and the age of them to kind of guide that. And then it takes that pressure off you for it to appear a certain way, or that it has to be this grandiose thing. A lot of times
That's really good. That's really good because one thing, my mom raised 6 children. And one thing my mom did, like I look back at the memory, right? And she would do that. Hey, Shawn, she would call me Shawners, right? Do you want to go to the store with me? Right? So I'd go
Yeah.
grocery shopping with her, and I was her child that made her laugh. So I would do silly things that would make her laugh, right? Or I was a child who, when it came to canning apple juice, I was the one who would stay up. My mom was a night owl. Well, of course she had to be a night owl. She had 6 kids, right?
Right.
And so I stayed up with her, and those are the best memories, no matter what the moment looks like, you know. And this is important, and I was thinking through this on even like when, if I worked outside of my home, okay, but it became a family business, and all of the children worked in the family business, right? So I remember throughout the years, the kids saying, "Why do we have to clean houses?" And I'm like, if the Lord wanted to give us a gas station, you would have worked at that gas station. If He gave us a laundromat, you would have worked at that laundromat, right?
Yep.
But this just happens to be the family business we were given, right? But just touch on what you said, like if that's you get up earlier to have that cup of coffee, so you have that quietness by yourself, right? Or even like in driving, how do you make that be your downtime when you're driving home, so that when you get home you're literally in the moment with your children. And so I really like that it doesn't have to look a certain way, and it's like whatever that moment is, like I don't know, just one of my grandchildren, I remember, being in their home in another state, and it was me, the grandson, and 2 dogs in the bathroom, just right there in the bathroom while Graham Cracker was sitting on the toilet. It was all of us, because that's what that child wanted, right?
Right.
And then when we moved to different geographical locations, and the same child was with me, and the door got shut, the child would lay on the ground, and underneath the door say, "Graham Cracker, what are you doing?" It's like, why did you shut us out? What are you doing, right? But here, this grandchild is going to be tall, like 6'7" at least, right? But at 5 years old, this grandchild is, likes to still sit on my lap and be rocked and stories read, right? And so it's just like whatever those moments may look like with that child, make
Yeah.
it special.
Yeah, absolutely. And breaking down your time when you realize 1 hour of your day is only just a small percentage of your day. It feels overwhelming because we have in this generation that we have with so many things, we have access to so many distractions that it feels like an hour is a lot to give. And I think part of it too, a thought that I had as you were, is learning how we fill up ourselves. So my husband asked me that question one time. My love language is quality time. I love having quality time. And some of my kids are touch and they love touching my face, and I hate having my face touched. But I had to realize that they're just loving me, right? They're just trying to love me the best that they can. But I can tell when I'm receiving their love and when I need to take some time. And I discovered that 1 hour at a coffee shop reading a good book will fill me up for a week or two. So it doesn't take a lot for me to be refueled. For my husband, it's going off and riding dirt bikes or snowmobile for a full day, and then he's fueled for months. And so I think that's one piece, is to really look at your life and go, man, where were these pieces where I really felt like I could breathe and satisfied and fueled up, and be able to take those times for you too. You're talking about being able to compartmentalize and take that time even on your ride home. It's okay. And I gave you permission to tell your kids, I love you and I'm going to spend time with you, but mommy needs 1 hour in the bath, or mommy needs to do this. And then it's all you. You're going to get the best part of me. And
Yeah.
it's important for them to learn that. And then that you're also modeling to them to take that time for themselves too, that they may need to get fueled up or centered to be able to give the best.
That's really good. And see, for me, I used to do, I have a visual here because I like visuals. If I needed to take a nap, because I have to shut down for a minute, right? I would take a pillowcase and I would put it over my eyes. And the children knew, unless the house is on fire, don't touch mom.
Yeah.
Like, don't touch, don't touch her, right?
Yeah.
Because, Gazy, you know this, as the years went on, it's like, okay, by the time I left my house, went to Costco Winco, right? Came home, that was a 5 hour trip just to go grocery shopping. And when I was rearing my children, I was the cook. No one really ever expressed an interest to cook, you know.
Yeah.
But I was the cook, and now I have all of my children love to cook.
Oh,
They love it. They just and some of them do recipes. I never did recipes. I was like the spaghetti, the meatloaf, the baked chicken, good cook, but I just never did the recipes. I just
yeah.
like, Lord, help me make this turn out good, and I would smell it, never tasted it, just smelt it, and I used my nose to bake,
Okay.
and I'm a great cook, right? Hardy cook, you know. But these little things, and and even down to like, okay, let's go with the virtual world nowadays, right? Share how the virtual world could hinder the style that you were created to be.
Yeah, that's it. That's an easy one. I can go all the way back to before I had my children, and I was obsessed with the US Weekly, People magazines, all the things to do with the stars, right? I was uh, obsessed with looking at those, and to the point where I'd be like, the US Weekly came weekly. So I'd be excited for my mailbox to come. And it wasn't until I stopped receiving those that I realized how much it was actually affecting me mentally and physically, to see the next star's diet or to see this, and began comparing myself, right? And if we take one look at the world, we realize that we were all created uniquely and differently. And that's one thing that is so cool about living, is there's just such a diversity that brings, if we were all the same, it would be so boring. It'd be so boring. But if you talk to anybody, they can tell you what's wrong with them or what they don't like about themselves. And and so with the virtual world, with the dating myself, with the MySpace, the Facebook, those things, we tend to put our best foot forward, which makes sense. But it's really easy to only see that piece and forget that they have a whole world outside of this 5 minutes that you're seeing, or this picture that they've taken that they just dolled up their house or themselves or whatever. And I realized that I was comparing myself to other homeschool moms and being like, wow, my kid's not reading yet, or why do they have a clean house, or how are they able to do the homeschool, cook, clean, and take their kids to sports? And I'm barely done homeschool and I'm still in my jammies, and it's 3 o'clock and the kids still haven't eaten lunch. And I began thinking bad about myself and thinking that I was ruining my kids, and I wasn't seeing the maturity of my children and the life skills that they were gaining, besides just the reading, writing, and arithmetic. They were learning all these social skills that they just weren't going to learn in a classroom. And the opportunity then, like you were saying, family business. My husband's a pastor, but he's also an electrician by trade. So sometimes he gets to take the kids with him, and they get to help him, and they get to, he pays them $5 an hour. So they get to learn how some work ethic and all these different things. And I remember the freedom came. I think I had 3 babies at the time, and they're all 21 months to about 2 years apart. So really I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a baby. And I had one kid that was screaming and crying because I didn't give him the right kind of cereal or whatever. And, the middle one is half dressed, and the baby's not feeling well and screaming. And I just kind of look, and I've got dishes in the sink, and I've got, the time we had an open concept in our house. And so the kids' toys were scattered all over. And I just had this freedom moment where I was like, I need to help set other women free. And so I took out my camera and I videoed real life at the Hutchins home.
I love it.
Because I had so many people coming to me like, I don't know how you do this. How do you be a mom? And how do you do this? And how do you do that? And I'm like, I don't feel like I'm doing it, but I'm glad that you see that. That's encouraging that you see that. But I also want you to see reality to make sure that you don't struggle with the same things that I am. And I didn't think it was going to be as powerful as it was. Like, I just was like, if I could help one mom in this season, that's amazing. And I can't even tell you how many comments that I got on it. Like, thank you so much. I needed that. Like, and of course it was scary. Like, now people are going to judge me now that they realize that the reason my house is clean is because I knew they were coming the week before.
Yeah.
And that for me, I don't think it was ever a pride thing. It was just I enjoy coming to somebody's house and going into a clean bathroom and things. And I want people to feel comfortable when they come to my home. But in that moment, it was just so freeing to go, it's okay to not have it all together. Like, these years are so precious and they're so hard. And I want to take just a second to commend those moms that don't have an option to work, or they really feel like that work is their calling. That's not wrong at all. And I actually feel like sometimes it's harder because I know that your desire is to be a mom, and I know that you battled that. Oh man, am I missing out, or am I not giving enough to my kids? But I think that if we are just real and authentic with our kids, that's when they grow and learn and they receive. And it's interesting, like, biologically, even in children whose moms have been abusive and not a good mom, there's still this biological need to, like, know their mother. And still love. Like, I take my own mother for example. Unfortunately, she didn't have a good family life, and she took care of her mother until her mother passed away. And her mother was a very vile, nasty, no love at all. But there was still, this is still my mother. She's still the one who gave me life. And so there's something so special about that piece of being a mother.
And obviously your mom gave you a love for motherhood. She did just, and so let's think of this for a second. One of my dear friends, she said that it was shared with her, the very best thing you could do, because she had a mom who was volatile, okay, and made a lot of unwise choices because she was a broken woman, basically, right? But the very best thing you could do is walk out being the very best mom that you can be, right? So like basically breaking a cycle, but it really comes down to choice, right? We
Yep.
can all say A, B, C, D, pretend and point fingers, point fingers, point fingers, point fingers, or we can own it to own it, right? We can choose to own our own life, right? And walk out what it is that we need to do,
Right.
right? One of our speakers was Jenna Lee Peabody Hardman, and she's a trained opera singer, and her voice is like, oh, melt your heart. Her voice is just beautiful. I had her share a song with our viewers, and it has to do with there's beauty all around
Mm.
when there's love at home, because love always wins. I remember one of our pastors was Brett Meter, and he shared that, he would go to the football games and the other parents would be like, where's your parents? And his mom was out home cooking, so that when he and all the boys got off of football practice, they would go to his house, right?
Uh,
And so we all have different lanes. And if I think of when my kids were growing up, because I had four, and three of them were in sports, I wasn't the mom that played carpool. I didn't play carpool until I got to the last child. And then I was the carpool queen, right? On the last child. And so you said the word grace, grace. So can you talk a little bit more about grace? Just delve, however you're led, into grace and how important that is, even over your own physical body.
yeah.
Grace.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it pertains to every aspect of our lives. When you're going to talking about body, right? As a women, especially if you've given birth, or as we age, just things just change. And again, that comparison world that we live in, we want to be a specific way, or we think that we're not beautiful if we're not that way. But then we realize, man, like for me, I carried 5 babies and delivered them. That's pretty stinking amazing. And I love when women are able to look at their bodies and go, those are my battle wounds. Like, I should be proud of, and no one has the right unless we allow them the right to tell us that that's yucky, or to tell that that's not good, or that we need to be a certain way. And that comparison game gets in trouble real fast. And I think with the grace piece of parenting is when we humble ourselves and to our kids, when we have messed up. I can use Sunday mornings. Sunday mornings are the worst. As my husband as a pastor, you better believe that there was a battle almost every single Sunday morning. And our lives with us. And he always jokes about needing his popcorn for the peanut gallery on Sunday morning when we're trying to get ready. And how it's just like, get in the car, we gotta go. Okay, now put on your smile, right? We're going to church. Trying to get everybody ready. But the piece that my kids glean is when I take the opportunity to say, hey man, I just need to stop for a minute and I need to ask your forgiveness. I wasn't loving you
Yes.
well in that moment. And one thing we tell one of our children, who just is big in everything. He's big in his emotions. He's big in everything. He loves hard. He gets angry hard. Everything about him is big. He's our passionate child, which I love that term because it's positive. He's just passionate. And he has even begun to pick that up, where he will say, I'm sorry that I did this. And he's beginning to glean these things. And so I tell him all the time, I say, son, you're a good boy who sometimes makes bad choices. And I say, sometimes mommy makes bad choices, huh? And yeah. And he, of course, at his age, he's quick to remind me of what that bad choice was.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And and I would say the same thing with parenting. Um, there is so many. Let's think of education. Let's think of educating or re-educating, right?
Right.
There is so many areas of, you don't have to be like, I'm the parent, that's all there's to it. And now certain things, yes, okay, but other things, it's like, we're teaching them to apologize.
Yeah.
And even, if, I had a situation where a parent made a decision over one of their children and I didn't agree with it. Well, I made the horrific error by speaking my disagreement in public. Shame on me because I embarrassed that child, but that child had matured so much that that child processed it in their mind and then just went on like nothing happened.
Mm.
But in my heart, I carried that and I thought, oh man, I need to make this right.
Yeah.
So I apologized to that child, that adult child, and the child said, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Because think of it, own it, to not owe it,
Yep.
right? And
Good.
so when we own it, oh snap, I made a mistake. Now own it, so that you don't owe it, meaning you have something hanging over your head, right?
Right.
It's just, and another thing, I was actually sharing this with one of my adult children yesterday, and that is that when I was growing up, or as an adult, let's say I got irritated with my mom. And we could just laugh right there, right? we could just sit there and laugh for a little bit, right? The next time I had a conversation with my mom did not say, hey, by the way, you jacked up over here. We need to resolve this. She just went on
Yeah.
in love,
Yeah.
in love. Because that has to do with grace too. It really has to do with grace. And I also like that you said they're children. And so I think we need to be cautious as parents to not think that Johnny over there in his mind is intentionally trying to do something that's wrong or that's not how things have been set up.
Yeah.
So
Well, I can give
go ahead.
a
That's what
great
I was going to say.
example. So that same child, we had to work with him. Like, you can't hit when you're angry. You have to use your words. You have to use your words. You have to use your words. Over and over, we would remind him, you have to use your words. You can't hurt somebody just because you're feeling this inside. What can we do? If you feel like you need to hurt something, can you punch a pillow? Can you do something, right? We're trying to give him all these tools. Well, he got better at not hitting people, but then it was, you stupid butt, right? He's going, and I was just like, I was so frustrated. I'm like, oh man. But the Lord was so gracious to me. He said, you actually need to praise him because he's using his words as what you told him, but you never told him what words to use. And so then I got to make it a positive. Wow, son, I'm so not using your hands and using your words. Next time, can we maybe say this? Teaching them how to be slow to speak, because we have this, especially in this generation, where we have this world where whatever we want, and we're verbally vomiting on people and not really seeing the consequence that it really does to somebody unless you're looking them eye to eye. And so teaching my children even to admit when they're wrong, not just say sorry. It's easy to say, apologize.
Yeah.
They will apologize, but I have started telling my kids, I hope that there's something inside you that hurts, that you hurt somebody else, and that you would want to come to them and make it right. And this is how we do it. So when you're ready. And so I began to see my children even come to me, hey, Mom, I'm really sorry that I was mean to you earlier. I just was feeling this or feeling that. And so giving them that time to process, because even as adults, we need that time to process.
That's
right? We can
really
back and
good.
forth.
Yeah. Even, and it makes me instantly think, even down to if you say, Johnny hit Sally. Now, Johnny, go say you're sorry. Well, you haven't given Johnny, I like that, processing. Give the child time to process what took place. That's really good. That's really good. So it takes time out to a constructive, mentally processing self. That's what it does.
Yeah.
And in them instead of them just thinking they're in trouble, no, I need you to think about this. And then how do you walk it out?
Right. And we can think of as adults how we put up our defenses as soon as somebody's telling us that we have to do something.
Yeah.
There's this initial rebellion or this resistance to it, and we're like, don't tell me what to do. But if we have somebody who comes alongside us in grace and says, man, the way you spoke to me really hurt my heart. Then all of a sudden you have this conviction of like, oh man, that was never my desire. Or maybe that was my desire, but now I'm seeing the consequence of that behavior. And then you actually usually want to make it right, right? If you
Yeah.
have that time to process and go, I don't want it broken. And we talk a lot about broken relationships in our family too. Like you're losing a piece. Like God put you in this family and gave you all these siblings. You know, there's some kids that don't have something. Like this is actually a huge blessing. I know it doesn't feel like it right now,
Uh-huh.
but look at all these playmates you had in 2020 when you couldn't play with any other kids and
That's right.
didn't know anybody, and how well you guys got along, and now that you have other influences. And so we just talk a lot about too about how other people can influence our behavior, and sometimes we need to take a step back from those people to go, wow, is that how I really want to behave? And so beginning to foster that, and I'm seeing it in my 13-year-old now, where she's wise beyond her years, and that's all glory goes to God and all his grace, because we were super immature when we were parenting her. But I feel like God's been really gracious in that process.
Okay. So let's go a different angle now. Talk. We have about 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes, 4 minutes left. Can you share a little bit about the importance of being in alignment of agreement as a mom and a dad?
Yeah.
In
I can.
parenting.
We were both stay at home. Our moms were both stay home moms, so that was something that was really important. And like I shared at the very beginning, was he's actually my second marriage, but didn't have children with my first marriage, and so I was very intentional with having conversations with him about what I wanted as a mother and how that's all I wanted to be, and he was on agreement with that. So of course that was instant attraction for me, but we have come to realize that we were both created very, very differently. I'm very, very soft, and I think a lot of times mothers are the comforters and the soft ones, and he's the more domineering one who will bring order to chaos in our home. And we have learned to appreciate each other's gifting and what we actually bring to our children, and it took us a long time to do that. So if anything I could say to young moms is, if you can begin to appreciate and praise the differences, because children really need the mother and they really need the father, because they're just different qualities that I believe that God designed, so that they can have both of those pieces to walk in a fullness and walk in an identity. And we see that with broken families where there's that struggle. There's this piece of the kids that are struggling when they don't have a dad in their life, and there's a piece that they struggle when they don't have that comfort in that mother to bring that warmth and that comfort in that. And so a lot of it has just come with choosing to appreciate the other person, even if we don't fully agree. And the biggest part has to be a united front in front of our children. We might not always agree on how that person parented, or the way they chose to make that decision. But in front of our kids, if my husband says something, even though I had just done something different, I will honor my husband, and I will tell my children, well, you know what? Let's just do it that way. Then I would take the time privately in our bedroom to say, hey, man, I actually did not agree with that. But there's something so powerful when your kids see you as a united front. They realize that they can't manipulate you, and they can't play that game where he said, she said, or dad said this, or mom said that. And because I've even heard my husband, well, if that's what your mom said, then that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, yeah. That's really important, because if you think of it, they're going to go and get jobs, right? And in jobs, they're not necessarily going to agree with certain things. But because of the model they were given, they know, oh gosh, I need to bend a little in this area to make it happen.
Yeah.
So really, if we think of jazzercise, lifting weights, marathons, you basically fit it all, Jillian. And we really thank you for your time. We thank your family for your time, and look forward to see what's going to continue to evolve and happen, because that desire to be in the personal training industry, that's not for naught. And just because it is in a different space does not mean it won't be used again.
Right.
So I just really thank you for taking your time, and we thank all of our viewers for coming today. And stay tuned for our next Sagionic 1027. And in the meantime, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon thee.
Mm.
Blessings. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.